You're listening to the Topco Business Unusual podcast. Now, the Business Unusual podcast. Learn from the greatest minds in business today. Interviews hosted by Ralph Fletcher. Learn how to improve business, get tips from industry leaders, and be motivated by real-life experience. Topco, Business Unusual.
So welcome to this week's Business Unusual Topco podcast. Today I'm joined by author, entertainer, I suppose, celebrity, KC Rottok Chesaina. I think I said that right the second time.
Well done, yeah.
And we were just going through the name and what does KC stand for? So, I mean, what does KC stand for?
Okay, so KC is Kibet. Kibet is my middle name. Chesaina is C, my surname. So, unfortunately, my name has a bit of repetition there. So KC is what they called me in varsity at Wits, and then I was like, I can't be KC Chesaina once I started working. It became KC Rottok. Then my boss said, no, we have to have your surname as the surname that's going to be there. If anyone needed to go and check your chartered accountant credentials, they will be searching by surname. So I ended up being KC Rottok Chesaina. So quite lengthy and a bit repetitive, but it's become like a brand name. So it is what it is.
It is now. And I mean, I've got your book here. It's probably famous all over LinkedIn now, everybody holding it up and saying I was in it. So I wasn't in it, but
yeah, it's a marketing strategy that's actually working quite well.
Where did you learn that marketing strategy from? It is a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I follow people on Instagram, and I see they get other people to endorse their products, and it's more powerful than you yourself there, showing, hey, this is me, this is my work, go out and get it. So if in retrospect, maybe I should have featured 100 CEOs rather than 31. Then I'd have 100 guys there on their LinkedIn, and these people, they're celebrities. I'm not. They are real celebrities. They've got 80,000 odd LinkedIn followers and so on. And once they just put up the product there and a little video, then you just see the sales ticking up. So that's been a learning curve from the first book that I did, which also had 31 people, 31 CFOs. CFOs perhaps are not as much out there. They don't do a lot more media. Their social media is a bit quiet. But I didn't basically get them to speak about the book really. And that's something that I've learned with this second book that's worked.
You haven't done it yet. You haven't got them to do it yet.
Yeah, okay. There's only so much you can do in a day, right? So that book came out over a year ago. It's going to be a bit weird to phone someone a couple of, because the interviews happened 3-4 years back. So to phone them and say, hey, remember that book I wrote about you? I'd like you to go and hold it up, and I take your picture and a video for LinkedIn. It may be a bit, it might feel like, that ship has sailed.
I don't know so much. So, I mean, I've read most of the book. It's an amazing book. And I've obviously seen it on LinkedIn and the people promoting it, which is also really good. So you've done a great job there.
Thank you.
And, for me, I suppose I really love autobiographies. And I often wonder what makes someone put that time and effort into telling other people's stories. What's driving someone to put that sort of investment of their time, energy to do that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Look, I think for me, before I wrote books, I used to publish a magazine. So I had 2 magazines that I did, and I did an award ceremony as well. And my first magazine was called The Expatriate Magazine. And it was an expatriate from the point of view of expatriates, or rather foreign professionals in South Africa from other parts of Africa like myself. I was aiming at changing the perception in South Africa, where, you know, people think of people coming from other parts of Africa as just people who are here to take and not give. So I really wanted to profile the stories
That's weird.
of African professionals, to say this is what they do. How did you end up here? Why are you in South Africa? Some people actually don't just come here without a job. They're actually fulfilling a skills shortage that is of benefit. You know, if you think about doctors, for example, actuaries, accountants, those are professions that are in need of critical skills. And there's a lot that there's people who are entrepreneurs, for example, from other parts of Africa, who start a business, come up with a business idea. They are employing 50, 100, 1,000 South Africans. So that perception was something I was driving at. And I think that's when I got into the game of telling other people's stories. And as a result of that, that's how I ended up with the book. And then, I then just got, I'm fascinated like you are, and I think we all are, about people's stories, how they got from one place to another.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I've become kind of a biographer, where I don't do lengthy biographies where I'm going to write about, you know, Ralph Fletcher from birth till to date, but I like, you know, short and to the point. Let me get, where did you start? Why do you do what you do? What is the key thing that we can learn from you? Those three things, then let's move on to the next person. That's kind of the approach that I have.
Can you answer those questions for us?
With respect to Ralph Fletcher?
No, to you.
I always tell other people stuff. Okay, so like me, I'm from Kenya, born in Nairobi. I came to South Africa in the year 2000 as a son of a diplomat. I studied here. I did accounting, but my mother is a professor of literature. So in our household, it was a type of household where, you know, a kid was only as good as how many books he read, you know. So it was a library of sorts. So we used to read, and writing was something that I did from high school. I used to do the high school play, you know, poems and all those kind of things. So I've always done that, and I thought that would be my career. But I was advised by my mom, who's a writer, no, you're not going to make any money as a writer. You need to go and do something real, either accounting, engineering, become a doctor. And maybe of those things, the one thing that I was able to do was the accounting, but it still bugged at me at the end of it. And so I've kind of come full circle, where I am now a writer. I'm more of a business writer. So that is aligned to what I studied, my profession, having studied accounting, having worked in the financial reporting space. These are people I encounter in, you know, my everyday life. So it was made it very easy for me to put together and to package not just the magazines, but also the awards that I did and the books that I've written.
Yeah, amazing, eh? And brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have 2 sisters. Actually writing a book about my one brother. Unfortunately, I lost him a year ago. So I'm
sorry
writing
about that.
Yeah, thanks. I'm writing a biography about his life, and all the proceeds from the sale of the biography will go towards his kids and their education. So that's kind of my project that I'm working on at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So you come from a family of underachievers, diplomats, and, you know, head of literature.
Well, they've done some things in their lives, so they're not too badly off. Yeah. So I've got 2 sisters who live in the UK. They're lawyers. My mom is back in Kenya. So she's a retired professor. Unfortunately, my dad and my brother are late, and there's me. I'm the last born. So I'm the baby of the family, and trying to keep up with all those who came before me.
You learned the lessons, right?
Yeah, I have. So I just pick up what they've done.
And it's funny that what you studied and what you're doing now sort of have helped, but your initial dream has come true in many ways, of being an author, being a business reporter.
Yeah. So I think my mom was right, because she said, listen, writing is not something that, if someone told you that they want to become, say, a doctor, you can't do a doctor. Can't be a doctor on the side while you're doing something else as a day job. But writing is really something that you could do as a hobby, right? So many people ask me, because I do work, I am a financial reporting expert at W Consulting. But I write basically when I get the free time. It's for me, it's a hobby. When I schedule an hour and I sit and I talk to someone, is no different from someone having a coffee with someone somewhere and just chatting. So it's something of interest. It's not a job where I go and sit and I'm asking, a CEO, tell me about your jobs, your stresses, and so on. For me, that hour is not something that I dread. It's something that I enjoy. And when I put it together, late at night, putting in an hour before bed, it's actually something that I feel like it's not something that's really dragging me down. So so it has worked out. I mean, I do the work of an accountant, but I write as well, and the writing something that I do mostly as a hobby, but thankfully it's now becoming a paid hobby, and gets me invited to podcasts such as
yeah, for sure. And you have people doing adverts on you. So I mean, where's the project itself? You could have spoken about anything. I mean, you've done the auditing profession, so you obviously know that quite well. But then you started talking around CEOs. What was the driver of that? Why?
Yeah. So initially the book that I did was a CFO book, and there's a bit of a selfish slant in that, because those are my clients, right? CFOs are the people who I work with, and I thought, look, nobody is interested in CFOs really. Mostly people are interested in entrepreneurs, are interested in maybe IT people who've done some stuff, come up with some sort of gimmick or whatever, an app. But no one talks about the CFO. They're in the back room. But a lot of these companies, especially here in South Africa, their success is pinned on the CFO. When there's not enough cash at Vodacom, people are looking and they're wondering, what's this CFO doing? Can't he manage treasury? And banks, their balance sheets are not looking good. Then, yes, they look at the CEO, but the CEO then goes to the CFO and asks him what's going on. Same with reporting failures when companies sign off and so on. Yes, there's a CEO, but the question they ask afterwards is, was he in cahoots with the CFO? So I thought the CFOs had a story to tell. And that's how I wrote my first book, which is Masters of Money, Strategies for Success from CFOs of South Africa's biggest companies. And then that book did well enough for the publisher, Jonathan Ball, to ask me to write a CEO book, saying, there's no CEO book in the market. There's lots of books that are focused on one individual, but there's none that cuts across and tries to identify, the success factors for CEOs in big companies. And therefore, I was the man for the job. It became easier because with the success of the first book, I could easily ask a CFO to recommend me to his CEO. And also when I was introducing myself, the gatekeepers there could say, okay, fine, there's a published author who sent an email, rather than with the first book when you send an email and they Google you and they're like, who's this guy? This guy's an accountant. What's he talking about writing a book?
So how did you get over that? Because that is a big thing, right? I mean, you got these guys there and a lot of time pressure. Who are you? You're new. How did you overcome that challenge?
Yeah, so it's all about persistence. There's no magic trick. I can't tell you guys. I can't tell you here to log on to this feature and it helps you do it. It's all about persistence and using multi-pronged approaches to get hold of someone. So you're not going to get everybody through LinkedIn. You want to get everybody through email. You're going to get them through using different, if you really want to get someone, you really need to use different access points. So if, for example, I'm looking for the CFO of MTN, do you know anyone who works at MTN? Send them a WhatsApp, give them a call, ask them, I'm trying to get hold of your CFO. How would you advise me to do it? Sometimes you're lucky and they say, oh no, I work directly with that guy and he's really approachable. Send me something and I'll send it to him and see what he says. That's the first.
What was your best message you ever sent that got the best result? What was the message that was forwarded?
Oh no, I didn't think about that one.
I've got a couple of them, but
all right,
you go.
Oh no, you go. I
do the typical one. I try and phone someone, they don't answer. I know they're not going to answer. Then I say, hey, hope you're well. Try to phone you. I just have a quick question for you, but I'll call you later. Cheers, Ralph.
Okay. And then they're like, oh, I must know this guy. Okay, I must.
Well, they start thinking, what's the question?
Okay, that's well, I've heard of this one where you send a message, someone doesn't reply, but they've read it. You send another message, they don't reply, and then your third message will be like, okay, I'm sorry to have bothered you. I really did not want to cause any trouble. Have a nice day. And everyone's like, oh, I feel guilty now. Oh, yeah, poor guy. Okay, cool. All right, let me give him
the sympathy vote. Okay, that's a good one. I'm going to use that one now.
Yeah, so that one also works.
So the third one, okay. Sorry to bother you.
I'm really sorry to have troubled you. I didn't mean to. I know you're a very busy person. I didn't mean to trouble you. I'm sorry to have bugged you. Do have a nice day, and God bless. Okay, maybe not God bless, but
I think one of the things that we've realized in the media industry is a lot of people lean on us. How do they get hold of these big decision makers? Because they are, I suppose, hard to get hold of. They've got many gatekeepers. So it's always interesting that, you know, that you are getting hold of them, and you're not just getting hold of them, you're getting hours of their time.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think most people want to tell their story, and there are some who don't want to tell their story, but want to do something. So, for example, Harry Kellan in my first book is the CFO of First Rand. He had not been interviewed much, right?
Yeah.
But I approached him from the angle of, no, look, because he was like, no, listen, I'm not someone to put myself out there. Then I was like, I wrote back to him and said, Harry, I Googled him. He's from, Durban, from a township. I'm like, there are kids in the township in Durban who might benefit from listening to your story. And he's like, okay, yeah, you're right. There may be a kid in a township who doesn't think that he belongs sitting at the top of Africa's biggest bank, and actually, if I actually put that out there, then it may help a kid somewhere. So, and even when I interviewed him, he was very clear, like, let's not spend too much time on me. Let's spend a lot of time on, and he talks about it. Let me tell you, how do you progress through an organization? How do you get into an organization? How do you overcome the imposter syndrome that some of us have, where you don't think like, I don't really belong, and therefore you go with your tail between your legs whenever you're in a meeting and you have ideas. You never put your hand up. You think other people should say it, or maybe after the meeting you go one-on-one and tell your colleague, who then uses it for their own advancement. So that kind of thing is what he was happy to share. And I think that was also some of those things were better focused than saying, Ralph went to University of Cape Town. He was top of his class, and he's a son of 2 chartered accountants, and he's an accountant. Then you're like, okay, fine, that's predictable. So a bit more of, what can I take from this, given where I am? I'm not Ralph, but what can I do with this as me?
Yeah. I'm always intrigued, because I'd imagine the journey for the different publications was probably a bit different, but I wonder, in that journey, what was the outcome you were seeking when you were doing the books? And then I often realize that when we pursue certain things, often what we get out of it is profoundly different to what we thought we were going to get out of it. And so I often think of like a race I'm going to do, like I'm going to, do well and get a medal, or, win it or whatever. But actually what I've learned is I've learned some discipline about myself, and I've challenged myself, or maybe I've realized winning's not everything. Actually, there's more profound things that come to it. In fact, it's participating that's so important, not the winning.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're putting it quite well. I mean, the book, the reason why I was writing the book was not to publish it and put it into stores. I thought I'll put together a book of 100 copies that I'll print myself, that I will use as a business card to the people that I'll meet along the way. I didn't really think I'm going to be, on Amazon and all those other places selling the book. And then, a friend put me in touch with the publisher. I sent it to them saying, I don't know. I'm not sure if they're going to publish something about CFOs. And the publisher was like, yeah. And then they worked with me as well. And they taught me a lot. So like my original book was called South Africa's Financial Leadership Manual, something like, something that walked into a bookstore and you looked at it, you'd just be like, okay, next, you know?
Yeah.
And so like working on it to come to the term masters of money, and who doesn't love money, you know,
Yeah.
getting that, that appeal for the book, being taught how to write, like, you know, my publisher would tell me, you know what, your articles are very formulaic, right? One guy to the next guy, you're following the same process. You start by telling us where he went to school, what he does, what his challenges are, and what book he's reading. You know, switch it up a bit. You know, let me not know what to expect from the next chapter, that kind of thing. You know, and then the feedback, and then also my growth, not just as an author, but as a person. Because then, you know, initially you're thinking, you know, this is an exclusive club. You know, you're not a member of the Authors Club of South Africa, and you have to wait for your invite, you know. And then now you actually think, I'm actually sitting next to, I go to a book fair and I'm sitting next to like the top authors in South Africa who've written, you know, 20, 30 books. And I'm like, wow, I'm sharing a platform with this guy. I go to Exclusive Books and I see my book there right next to, you know, Spare from, you know, Prince Harry. And you're like, okay, cool. You know, I mean, I can be there, you know, so it's something like, you know, they say you should try something, because if you succeed at it, great, you've succeeded.
Yeah.
If you fail at it, then you learn something. So either learn or you win. So for me, thankfully, it's been both. I've learned a whole lot, and I'm feeling like I'm actually getting the winning feeling coming through, and keeping on thinking of what can I do next? Where else can I go? You know, this is good, but what is great? You know, I want to move from good to great. Yeah. So,
and you give that in the opening remarks of the book. You actually talk about the Brian Tracy's sort of definition.
Yeah. Brian Tracy saying, what does he say? He says, becoming a billionaire is the first million is hard. The second million is inevitable, right? Because it's the traits that you develop in getting that second million that will make it inevitable, right? Because now you know the tricks of the trade. You don't even have to. You'll just you know, be lying in bed and the million will come to you, so to speak. So I like that, because I saw that experience with my two books. The first book was just a slog, you know, getting hold of people, getting the publisher, you know, knowing how to write, how to say, everything was just a learning curve. And then with the second one, now it was like, I've done this before. When you send an email or you contact someone and they say, hey, no, sorry, I'm not interested, it's not painful at all. Initially, when someone said no, it was like, oh, God, oh, that hurt.
Who was the first person that said yes?
The first person that said yes, I think that was someone I was actually working with at the time. So that was
easy wins.
A CFO that I was working with.
So go for the easy wins.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. Start with the easy wins. In fact, the easy wins may not be as great, but they're easy. But at least you've started, right?
Yeah.
At least you have 4 or 5 chapters that you've put together. But if you say, I'm not going to start until I get the CEO of Vodacom, you know, the biggest telecoms company, of the CEO of Bidvest, if I don't get her, then it's not going to happen. Then you're never going to get going. So like, you know, it's just start with the easy ones and then build up on that. And that's how it's worked out.
I love the way that you said you're just going to print 100 copies for yourself, because you've taken the pressure off yourself. Did you have dreams of publishing? Obviously you must have. I sometimes wonder, when you said that, what did you say to the CFOs? Did they get comfort from you saying, it's just for 100, don't worry, it's just for my own thing? Or did that work against you?
No, so that's what I planned, but that's not what I told them, right?
Okay.
Because they're not going to give you an hour for you to print 100 copies that you need to store in the bedroom, you know? That's not worth their time. They want to be told that, first of all, who are you? First of all, you need to project yourself as this. You want to talk to me? I'm the guy, right?
And who are you? How did you do that?
Yeah, so with that, I basically just talked about the great things that I've done in my profile, the people I've interviewed in my magazine, the fact that, you know, I've been on TV before, the fact that I've run an awards ceremony, and these are the kind of guys I've had at my awards, you know, which then they begin saying, okay, fine, you know, KC is, okay, first of all, he seems to be a decent guy, you know, he's a guy worth an hour of my time, you know, because I'm very senior, I only deal with senior people. Then secondly, the project, you know, even if you don't have a publisher, you know, talk about how this book is going to be distributed. And even if a lot of it is dreamy stuff, just put it on there, because you're actually describing your lofty ambitions, so no one wants to work with someone who's not dreaming big. They want to join a big dream. No one wants to join a dream that is, okay, kind of, let me tell you, it's small now, I'm hoping to get hold of a publisher. This is under consideration. I'm kind of, picking which publisher I want to work with, I don't have one that I've settled with, but it's my choice. I'm kind of picking which one, make it sound like the offers have been coming in.
Thick and fast.
Whereas it's kind of,
where did these sales tactics come in? I mean, the diplomat and
No, I think the sales tactics came from the magazine, right? When I told you the reason why I did the magazine, and I spoke to a few publishers and so on. When I started, my very first magazine was woeful. It didn't look that great. It was just, the paper was too thick and so on. So I went and spoke to publishers, and they told me about the media game. It's great to have good content, but you're not going to last very long if you can't sell, so you need to, when you're selling advertising, that's one of the hardest jobs, selling is hard, right? And I don't really be successful in any business if you can't sell yourself. Actually, not just business, many professions are also involved with selling. I mean, an optometrist, and simply the fact that your place doesn't look presentable, your name doesn't scream professionalism, doesn't sound like you're a guy who knows how to assist people with their eyes and their best sunglasses, their best glass spectacles. No one's going to come. So selling is something that is, I think, it's joined at the hip with success. So thankfully, that magazine process is something that helped me along the selling path, because I'd had to sell a lot of advertising in order to keep it, to sustain it. Unfortunately, with COVID, the magazine went bust, but that's part of the lessons that you learn.
For sure, and you can take that forward. And I want to get into the book that sort of we got into, which is the X Factor, CEO X Factor. But was there any takeaways that you got worth sharing around the CFOs, the masters of money?
Say that again. You mean
the first publication that you did? Is there any sort of key things that you thought that you got from your first book?
Yeah. So
CFO Masters of Money.
Yeah. When I wrote the first book, it was a lot about the careers that the people have led and how they got to where they got to, what levers did they pull in order to become CFOs, and what is the work of a CFO? Because a CEO is basically understood by everyone. Like if you go to a spaza shop, you instantly can tell who the CEO and what the CEO does, right? So he's probably the guy behind the counter. If he's not, he's sitting behind a chair with papers, but he's the guy who runs the shop. And if there's any problem, the boy at the front of the shop will call him. So we know what a CEO does, but a CFO is not really well understood. So that was part of it. And what I did with that book is that whenever anyone who read that book, who I knew, I would tell them, please give me honest feedback. Don't hold back. Don't tell me, oh, KC, good book, good job. Yeah, should be a bestseller. Just tell me. And a lot of the stuff that they told me, I implemented in the second book. And a lot of the lessons that I learned from now that I was a published author. For example, authors will tell you, for your book to be a success, don't spend too much time trying to please your subject, which I did too much of on the Masters of Money. I'd write the article, I send it to Ralph. Ralph reads it, he chops out everything that he doesn't like. With the CEO X Factor, I was like, look, it's not about the fact that you've got this cute dog. I think you think your dog is cute and it's important, but my readers don't really care about your dog. So I'm not going to bother sending you the article for you to, butcher it and send back what you like. It's all about what the readers are interested in. Yeah.
And so did you get that permission in front, or was that something that you had to sort of negotiate?
With the interviewees. Yeah. So some interviewees will say, I'd like to see the text before it goes to publishing. Some don't bother. Some are just like, this game, I've been interviewed a billion times before. You go write what you write. Just don't misquote me. So those that asked for the publication, or rather asked for the stuff before, I sent them a transcript of our discussion.
Okay.
Right? Because, I mean, you can send me a transcript of everything that I've told you in this podcast, which is factual. But I mean, if you want to go and write an article and you say, and you'd like to say your impressions of, you know, those are your impressions of me, right? If you think, I speak too fast, that's what you think. And I can't come now and change and say, no, Ralph, I think you're wrong. I mean, that's what you think. I think I speak too fast. So my impressions of them, they can't edit. So I sent them the transcript. They were allowed to say, okay, fine. No, I didn't mean 10 billion. I meant 15 billion or whatever the number is. Yeah, those kind of things they could change.
So, I mean, some of the questions that I had was that, I couldn't help but see a correlation. In fact, my son, I was reading the book and my son came into the room.
Oh. Okay.
So he actually asked me about the book, but then he said, is it like Think and Grow Rich?
Okay. How old is he? Let's start there.
He's 19. So I mean, why should he read a book like this? That was the other thing, you know?
I like that. So unfortunately, that was one of the lessons from Masters of Money. I think there's a lot of people who picked up the book who thought, when I start reading this book, these masters of money are going to be telling me, you should go into the property, you should invest in property, and you should put 30% of your portfolio in Bitcoin or whatever. I think that's what they may have. And that's partly the way the title is, but I think they also, if that's the case, they probably didn't read the back of the book. A lot of Amazon, ebooks, everyone online will give you even the first chapter of a book. You can read. So before you buy, think about whether or not, I mean, you can go sit in a bookshop nowadays and have a coffee and read 2 chapters before you decide, no, I want to read the whole thing. So I advise people to do that. In terms of why someone should read the book, I mean, in my book, I have people who are bestsellers, right? So someone like Mteto Nyati, who wrote Betting on a Ducky, former CEO of MTN, Microsoft, and so on. His book has sold, tens of thousands of copies, which is great, right? But the people who bought that book learned everything, or learned from Mteto what his key lessons are. What I was looking for with my 31 people, including Mteto Nyati, was to, tell me, what is that top thing? What is that X factor that you think for you is the one thing? Give it to me, the thing that's top of your mind. And of course, the thing that's top of his mind is probably his best piece of advice, right? So so I was getting the best piece of advice from 31 business minds. So, and also Mteto's experience is a lot technologically based. He's also an African from, a rural setting. So he can only give his perspective from the life that he's lived, right? Yeah. If you contrast that with maybe, someone like the SARS commissioner and the life that he's lived, he's been an academic, he's worked in public sector, he's worked in private sector. Sectors and so on, right? So he can give you his perspective. And I like people like that, because for him, he was like, let me give you, I have 6 eyes of leadership. And then he goes through them. Eye number 1, number 2, number 3 is a biblical guy. And he talks about how he correlates his business leadership journey with Moses, who was leading the Israelites out of Egypt to this land called Canaan, land of milk and honey. So I like that, because he gave that to me. And I mean, of course, Kisweta can write a full book. I'm sure he can, but I don't know what more will be so good other than those 6 eyes that he gave me. And that applies to so many other people that I have in the book, women, giving the female perspective of leadership, how hard it is. I mean, that means someone who picks up, Mteto Nyati can't tell you that, Nyimpini, who has the book Take Charge, which has also done very well, can't really talk too much from a women's point of view. So, the 10 or so women who I have in the book can be able to correlate and give you that from their perspective. So I like the fact that it's broad. Your son should not think it's a Think and Grow Rich type of book, although if you want to go from there's entrepreneurs. The guy who started the largest private school education company in Africa, Chris van der Merwe of the Curo schools and Stadio Multiversity, he's there. He also talks about entrepreneurship. So there's a bit of that. There's a few of the entrepreneurs in there. The Vodacom guy and how he, took the equipment business and ran with it and ran it like his own business, that kind of thing. There is a bit of that, but I don't think it is a man. I touch on that in the intro. You must have seen that, Ralph, where I talk about CEOs. They are 55, 60 million rand a year. Why do they earn so much a year? What is it that they do? So there is an angle to that as to success. There's an aspirational angle in the book, but I think it's mostly a career progression book more than, go and spend your money on Bitcoin type of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that Shamil thing was interesting. Mtete's was interesting. Mpumi from Bidvest, I thought was interesting for different reasons from that female perspective. And I suppose one of them was that she went into board meetings really not sure what to ask other directors. And I was thinking to myself, geez, that's so simple, but so profoundly important, because there's people that get promoted and you don't realize what people don't know.
I loved Mpumi's story.
Oh, wow.
For that. Yeah. And she was quite honest about that, saying like, I needed to leave this company. Clearly, I'm earning a salary that I don't deserve. I'm a ghost worker here because I'm a director. And I also don't want to be here on account of my blackness and my femaleness, right?
Yeah.
And my youth, just here where people think like, all right, I know Mpumi, she's probably sitting there just because, she's got the good looks and that's it, So she's like, I need to earn my spot here. When the HR director is talking about staff turnover, I need to be able to challenge him and to, talk about the metrics in the industry and that kind of thing. And she's like, no, I need to go and learn this stuff. And she talks about how when she was appointed the CEO, how she was criticized, not criticized, but people were like, there's definitely something going wrong there at Bidvest, and they've got the perfect scapegoat to put there. This is they're not really serious about having a CEO. And I loved interviewing her because, when just the 1 hour I spent with her, I could just see this is a proper business leader, not there because of ticking any box or as a token appointment. She talked about, you may have read, how she differentiates when she's winning business, right? And the person who introduced me to Mpumi actually told me, man, she's a business shark. That's the term. He was like, she's a shark. And I was like, okay, let's see. And she was talking about how when she was running the cleaning business, how she would win work. Because I asked her, cleaning is cleaning. You get a building, you're cleaning the ABSA building, you need an army of 50 cleaners and you get them in there with squeegees and soapy hot water and you're good to go. And she actually told me how you can distinguish yourself from the other cleaner. And it depends on which company you're cleaning. So if it's an ABSA, go and read their annual report. Try and find out what is important to ABSA. Maybe to ABSA, their most important thing is women empowerment. And you need to go and tell them how, my team is going to be these women who have been running and so on, and how with every rand that we get, we are going to give to this, or if it's a mining company, maybe they're interested in the environment and talk about how the cleaning agents you're going to use are all green and so on. So I was really impressed by her.
Yeah, she was impressed. I agree with you. I was also really impressed with her. And is there anyone that surprised you, like either good or bad? Was there any surprises? Because also some of these guys can be a little bit guarded, right? So like...
Yeah. There's surprising stuff. I asked them, tell me something that people don't know about you. And Mpumi is like, she'll tell you how she according to her, nobody can beat her, and she's one who... She'll be playing Monopoly with her kids, and it's not about that they're her kids. She's not going to back down. 30 seconds, everyone must want to be on her 30 seconds team, So her favorite song is Michael Jackson Can't Beat, because her attitude is that I'm winning at everything. I don't care how old you are or if you came out of my womb, I'm going to beat you, that type of thing. So those are interesting things. Other things that people who have done in their past, Kisweta talking about how he made a safety belt. He was given an old car and he didn't have a safety belt, and he went and he made his own safety belt as a kid, and that's how his mind works, trying to problem solve, that kind of thing. Mteto talking about how people think he's a poster child for success. He was top of the class, but he talks about how he used to smoke daha as a kid, how he impregnated a couple of women. He's just honest about that. Guys,
Yeah.
I wasn't a good guy.
Yeah.
I was a ruffian as a kid, and at
Yeah.
some point I turned the corner. So there may be other kids out there who think like, I'm the black sheep of the family. You may be the black sheep, but can make something of yourself. So those are things that were surprising, but also I found them, and that people have read. I found some of the books and the concepts people have tried in corporate to be very interesting. People who have, Sandra Krauss talks about unlimited leave. They have unlimited leave in their company. I was thinking, wow, that's wild. I don't know if that's an idea I would want to put, that we have no leave policy, take leave whenever, and that throws the ball to the employee's court for the employee to actually think about, should I take a break, or does the company need me, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
I think also what sort of stood out for me is I was almost intrigued, because for the first couple of chapters, everyone seemed to be a CA. So I don't know if you would just be, there's a bias there, if I'm honest. I was going to ask you what made you choose people. So I was like, is there some bias here? And then I did some research, and I listened to your awards program. It was online. And I noticed your comedian, he also is a CA. He's a call center agent.
Okay, at the SAPSA Awards.
Yeah. So I thought that was quite funny. But so there was a couple of things. There was people from different varying backgrounds, but there seemed to be a couple of common themes. One was they had some sort of financial or accounting background. Number two, they seem to be entrepreneurial from a young age. These are not just CFOs or CEOs. These are people who know how to buy and sell, and are trading from a young age, right? Rich or poor backgrounds. It doesn't really matter. The third thing I saw is they seem to be studying on their own, and generally studying the thing, not that they wanted to study initially, but studying and working.
Yeah. Lovely. Well done. I should have you as my book. That's really well put. So I think accountants have an advantage. The DISCM CEO, the incoming one, talks about it, saying that, when finance knows the story before other people do, right? Because you can be able to look at the numbers, and you can already know where is this business going before someone perhaps who's not in that space. So finance is definitely a big advantage. Yes, you are right. These people are entrepreneurial. I mean, someone like, CEO of Vodacom, he'll tell you how he split the schoolyard. He had his own, he was running his operation in Crash, where he had people selling sweets for him. He'd buy them in bulk, and he'd assign 5 of them, that part of the playground is yours. The guy from Durban, Zungu, Sandile Zungu. I mean, what a guy. I mean, his mom is a nurse. She has all these empty containers from the clinic. His dad works at an oil company, and there's all this waste oil that's there. So he figures, why don't we take this waste oil, put it in jars, and go and sell it, I mean, from a young age, thinking like that, and you sell it to the Magog, and, perhaps some would die without paying him. So he learned about credit. He learned about, selling on credit and those kind of things. So yes, entrepreneurial, hunger for learning, right? Whether it is formal or informal. The other people like Mpumi, she says she left a cushy job in corporate to go work in a municipality, or rather in the city of Joburg, right? Working with government, where, who wants to for government with the reputation that they have. But she knew that if she could manage the people there, she could come back out of that, and she'd have seen, the worst of it all, and she'd be able to handle, tough situations. So that's a learning. Whereas the other people who went and did MBAs, the other people who went to Harvard, and they did all these kind of programs, and they'll tell you about how that was beneficial, sitting with other CEOs, networking at that level, and so on. So so on the CA part, my first book, Masters of Money, of the 31, 30 of them are chartered accountants, as it is. If you want to be chief financial officer, you have to be an accountant in some shape or form. But the CEOs, not all of them are accountants. I think there is a number of them who are accountants, but there were a number of them. There's a Sanlam emerging markets guy who was actually an agriculture graduate, right, who ended up in that position. There's people who never even, who dropped out of, who are teachers, like the Curo guy. And he says, right, I'm a teacher, but I went and hired a bunch of chartered accountants. So even if he didn't study, he knew this is a gap that I do not have, right? I'm very good at the education sector, but on the numbers side, I'm very poor. And he spent money on qualified staff who knew much more than him to help him take his business to where it ended up. So that's another thing, being able to identify the skills gaps and being self-aware, right? Being self-aware is also very important.
I think the other thing that came across for me was these leadership skills. And I think you asked him, Teto, is it taught or is it natural? Is it
nature or nurture?
Nature.
That's right.
And he said, well, it's a bit of both. But I thought that was a really interesting answer that he gave, and I couldn't help but see the correlation to then Ryan Noach from Discovery, who then said actually he was a doctor. He had these natural leadership skills, but he had to actually nurture the leadership development and the business science stuff. And he went and got coaches, mentors, and I think he did an MBA. So I can't remember. I think he did do an MBA, but I do remember that he invested in that leadership side of his, because, like as you say, he was a doctor, but he also had an entrepreneurial knack for him, because he took people to war-torn places and helicopters for whatever, for life or something like that, and so on. So he did always have that interest, and he wasn't your traditional doctor. I mean, this guy was a bouncer when he was at varsity. And if you look at Ryan Noach, if you've met him or if you've seen him online, he's pretty buff. So he spends a lot of time in the gym. So he's not your average doctor, but he invested in that. So I think the ones who are naturally entrepreneurial have an advantage, because I mean, if from a young age you're actually thinking of selling sweets on the playground, you're probably going to have a future selling something to someone, right? Yeah. But as Mteto says, because for him, Mteto, talking about self-awareness, I asked him, what's next for you? And when I spoke to him, he was still just CEO of Altron. And I asked him what's next. He said, I'm not the type of person to create something, right? So he was self-aware, because I asked him, oh, wait, are you going to go and start your business? He says, no. I'm not the guy to originate an idea. I'm a guy who, you start the idea, bring me in, and I'm going to take it to the next level, right? And that's what he's doing at BSG. I mean, BSG is an old company. It was started by someone else. It's working well. So he took all the money that he had earned previously. He's pumped it in there. He's the executive chairman. He's running the company. So he has that level of self-awareness, And he did talk about nurture, right? I mean, you can't nurture a lot of things. You can't say that someone cannot, if they are determined to become something. It's like a basketball player, right? I mean, the tall guys have an advantage, right? So that's nature, right? But there are people who are shorter than them who are much better. I mean, LeBron James is not the tallest person in the NBA, but I mean, because he spent more hours on the court, was more determined, has a greater winning attitude, same as Michael Jordan and so on, who believes, like Mpumi, that they can't be beaten, they end up becoming, the greatest of all time. So there is an aspect of both that is there. There's some natural things that can help you along the way, but if there is a level of nurture, either in the people who sponsor you or they mentor you or your parents and so on, and yourself, you can be able to get to that leadership level. And I mean, I suppose in a way there was, you mentioned the Cura guy, but not many are founders. A lot of them have taken existing businesses and made them better.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was interested in, have you read the book From Good to Great? I don't know if you read that book.
No.
You have?
No, I've not.
No. There's a thing called a level 5 leader. And I was wondering how many of them you consider to be level 5 leaders. In other words, humble, from the back, that the others built the others. And it certainly came across that we have a significant amount of those people are definitely nurturing the next generation. I don't know who said it, but they said, learn a skill, get innovative in the skill, then teach it to someone else and move on. It might have been Kisweta.
Was that Kisweta, or it could have been the Dragon's Den lady. I don't know if you've got to her.
Yeah.
So she talks about paying it forward and how it's it's a cycle that is of benefit to you. I mean, there's that thing saying that, even the lady from the Business Leadership South Africa, she talks about it, talking about how, people may think that, business leaders should focus on business and leave community and society, to the politicians and to community leaders. But she talks about how, it's all intertwined, right? It's all connected. So for example, when you're having a country where there's more and more unemployed graduates, when the economy is tanking, that's your consumer base, right?
Yeah.
The fact that we're having power cuts now, the guy from Piedmont talks about it, says how much money the hospitality industry is losing, because remember, hotels have to run generators, right? Casinos have to run on generators. That's impacting them. So they can't be quiet anymore. They need to be a prominent voice in changing society. As well as you talk about the paying it forward, the guy who's going to rob you is probably just, living in a society where he has no other option. Again, something that Busi Mavuso talks about, the days that we had in July, where people in KZN were rioting, looting shops, burning shops. Those are people with nothing to lose. And she talks about the South African society. A well-developed society is like a diamond, where you have super rich at the top, super poor at the bottom, and everybody else is somewhere in the middle, and it's a diamond shaped. Whereas South Africa is a pyramid, right? We have the poor at the bottom, lots of poor at the bottom, and very few at the top, and therefore we are sitting on a ticking time bomb. And everybody needs to play their part in that. Yeah, we must all play a part